I've taken calls that changed companies, killed deals, moved markets, and forced me to rebuild entire plans overnight. But nothing prepared me for this one. Her name lit up my phone, and before I could even say hello, I heard it. That kind of silence. The kind that feels like someone is holding their breath so they don't fall apart. Then she said 3 words that made everything else disappear. I'm pregnant. For 1 second, the noise in my head died. No Tesla, no SpaceX, no pressure, no mission. Just her voice, in a future I wasn't ready to imagine, but suddenly couldn't stop seeing. I asked if she was okay. I asked where she was. I asked what she needed. And then she said the sentence that still hits me like a knife every time my phone buzzes at night. Don't act like you care now. I froze. Because deep down, I knew this call wasn't about a baby. It was about everything I broke before this moment. Then she said it, calm, cold, final. You were the worst mistake of my life. And in that second, I realized the call didn't ruin me. It exposed me. I didn't expect the call to change my life in under 10 seconds. I've had calls that moved markets, calls that delayed launches, calls that created chaos in rooms full of people who were supposed to know what they were doing. I've had calls that made me move millions, reroute teams, cancel plans, and start over from zero. But this one didn't sound like any of those. It didn't come with noise. It came with silence first. The kind of silence that feels like someone on the other side is trying not to break before they speak. When she finally spoke, her voice was shaking. She said, "I'm pregnant." And for 1 second, just one, I forgot everything else. No meetings, no deadlines, no mission, no pressure, no headlines, no noise. Just that sentence. Just those 2 words sitting in the air between us, like the world had paused to hear what I would say next. I remember standing there, staring at nothing, feeling something crack open inside me that I didn't even know was still alive. Not fear first, not panic. Something softer. Something I usually don't let myself feel all the way. Hope. I asked her where she was. I asked if she was okay. I asked if she needed me there. And that's when everything changed. Because she didn't answer any of that. She took a breath, a long one, like she'd been carrying a sentence for weeks and hated the weight of it. And then she said, "Don't do that. Don't act like this means something now." I went quiet, not because I didn't have words, because I suddenly understood this call wasn't about sharing news. It was about delivering a wound. I tried to stay calm. I told myself she was emotional, scared, overwhelmed, maybe angry about how things had been lately. Maybe this was bad timing. Maybe I deserved some of it. I probably did. But then she said the line I still hear in my head at the worst possible times. The line that can make a room full of people disappear even when I'm standing in front of them. She said, "You were the worst mistake of my life." No shouting, no drama, no tears in that sentence. That's what made it worse. It was clean. Like she had already cried before calling me. Like she had already replayed every memory and reached a conclusion she didn't need to debate anymore. I've heard criticism my entire life, publicly, privately, loudly, strategically. I've been called reckless, arrogant, impossible, unstable, obsessed. I've been misunderstood and, to be fair, sometimes exactly understood. But that sentence landed differently, because it didn't attack what I built. It attacked what I was to someone who once looked at me like I was safe. And I knew instantly I had helped create that sentence. People think endings happen in one moment. They don't. By the time someone says something like that, the ending started a long time ago. It starts in tiny places. A missed call you don't return because you're in the middle of something. A promise to show up that becomes a text saying, "I can't make it." A conversation where you nod, but your brain is already 3 problems ahead. A woman asking, "Are you listening?" and you saying yes, while she can feel the lie in your face. It starts when ambition becomes your language and the person next to you slowly realizes they have to compete with a future you haven't even built yet. That's what I did. Not in one big betrayal, in 1,000 small abandonments. I told myself I was doing important work. I told myself pressure justified distance. I told myself she understood who I was. I told myself if she loved me, she'd understand the pace, the chaos, the constant pull. And maybe she did understand. Maybe that was the problem. Maybe she understood so well that she saw the truth before I did, that I could make room for impossible ideas, but not always for the people who loved me while I built them. When we first met, she didn't ask for much. That's what made her dangerous to me. She wasn't loud, she didn't perform, she didn't chase attention. She had this way of looking at me like she was waiting for the real answer, not the polished one. Most people react to the surface. She reacted to the pauses, to the places where I changed the subject too fast, to the moments where I joked instead of admitting I was exhausted. She wasn't impressed by speed. She cared about presence. And presence is harder than performance. Performance, I know how to do. Presence requires you to stop managing the room and actually be in it. She made me want to do that. At least in the beginning. We had nights that felt almost normal. Conversations that weren't about outcomes. Dinners that lasted longer than planned because neither of us wanted to be the first to break the quiet. She would tell me things in a simple way, and somehow I'd hear more in her silence than in most people's speeches. For a while, I thought maybe this was what balance looked like. Not because my life got easier, because she made difficult things feel less sharp. But I made a mistake I've made before. I treated comfort like something that would wait for me. I assumed she'd still be there after the next crisis, after the next launch, after the next fire I had to put out, after the next month where everything was temporarily insane. I kept saying temporary. Temporary is one of the most dangerous words in a relationship. People hear it and build patience around it. They tell themselves, just survive this phase. But if your entire life is built on high stakes, there is always another phase. She started noticing before I admitted anything. She stopped asking when I'd be free. She stopped planning things in advance. She stopped saying, it's okay, when I canceled. That last part should have scared me. It didn't. I misread her silence as maturity. I thought she was adapting. I thought she was becoming stronger. What I didn't understand was that she wasn't adapting. She was detaching. There's a difference. Adaptation still reaches for you. Detachment starts letting go while standing right next to you. I saw the signs and called them stress. I saw the hurt and called it timing. I saw the distance and told myself we'd fix it later. Later is where people lose everything. The night before that call, we had argued. Not the kind of argument people imagine. No screaming, no broken glass, no dramatic exits. Just two people sitting in the same room, exhausted, speaking in careful sentences that were trying not to become honest. She asked me one question I should have answered months earlier. She said, when do I stop coming second? I should have answered the truth. I should have said, I don't know. Instead, I gave her a smart answer, a structured answer, a future answer. I said things would calm down. I said I was building something for us. I said she needed to trust the process. The moment I said that, I saw it in her face. That look people get when they realize they're not talking to a person anymore. They're talking to a system. She nodded, and that nod should have terrified me, because it wasn't agreement. It was grief. The next day she called. I'm pregnant. Then the silence. Then the sentence that split everything open. You were the worst mistake of my life. I wanted to defend myself. I wanted to ask how she could say that after everything. I wanted to remind her of the nights we were good. The way she held my hand when no one was watching. The messages she sent me before big meetings. The way she looked at me like she saw a version of me I wanted to become. I wanted to say I loved her in the only ways I knew how. I wanted to say I was trying. But trying is not the same as showing up. And in that moment, I knew she wasn't talking about one mistake. She was talking about the pattern, the emotional debt, the way I made her feel chosen in private and abandoned in practice. She was talking about believing me when I said soon and learning that soon was just a softer version of no. So I didn't fight her. I asked one thing. I asked, "What do you need from me right now?" That question should have come much earlier, too. Her voice changed when she answered. Not softer, just tired. She said, "I needed you months ago." There are sentences that follow you. That was one of them. I've replayed that call more times than I'd admit out loud. Not because I'm stuck in it, because it revealed something about me I spent years refusing to name. I thought my biggest flaw was intensity. It wasn't. Intensity can build things. My biggest flaw was believing that good intentions could replace emotional responsibility. I thought loving someone internally counted, even when my actions kept translating into absence. I thought if my reasons were noble enough, the damage would hurt less. It doesn't. Ambition doesn't comfort someone crying alone. Purpose doesn't answer a message at 2 a.m. Vision doesn't hold a person together when they feel invisible. And if you keep making someone feel invisible, eventually they stop trying to be seen by you. That's what happened to us. She didn't leave in one day. She left in pieces. First the softness, then the trust, then the future she had started imagining. By the time she said those words on the phone, she was just saying out loud what had already happened inside her. I was hearing the ending late because I had been emotionally late for a long time. People online love simple stories. Hero, villain, success, failure. But real relationships don't break like that. They break in contradictions. I cared about her. I also neglected her. I wanted peace with her. I kept bringing chaos home. I said she mattered. I built a life where she had to prove she could survive being treated like she did. Both things can be true. That's the part no one wants to hear, because it means damage can come from people who don't mean to destroy anything. After the call ended, I just stood there. No dramatic breakdown, no movie scene, just stillness. The kind of stillness that happens when your body knows, before your mind does, that something permanent has shifted. I looked at my phone like it might explain what just happened if I stared long enough. It didn't. Screens are good at delivering information. They're useless at carrying weight. I didn't cry right away. That came later. Not because I was trying to be strong, because shock delays everything human. I went back to work. I sat in meetings. I answered questions. I made decisions. I probably sounded normal, maybe even sharp. That's the strange thing about heartbreak when your life is high functioning. Your collapse doesn't always happen where people can see it. It happens in private, in the gap between tasks, in the moment after everyone leaves and the room finally gets quiet enough for the truth to enter. Mine happened that night. I got home and the place felt wrong. Not empty, wrong. Like a room that had witnessed something and didn't know how to return to being just a room. I saw small things that shouldn't have mattered and suddenly mattered too much. A mug, a hair tie, a message thread I didn't open, a jacket she left once and forgot. I sat down, picked up my phone, and reread old conversations like there might be a point where I could locate the exact line where love turned into damage. There wasn't one line. There were hundreds. Tiny moments where she asked for closeness and I offered efficiency. Moments where she wanted honesty and I gave reassurance. Moments where she needed presence and I sent plans. I cried then. Not loud, not dramatic. The kind of crying that feels like your body is finally admitting what your ego was blocking. I cried because I knew she was right in a way I could never publicly defend against. I cried because worst mistake sounds cruel until you realize someone had to be deeply hurt to say it like that. I cried because I understood she wasn't trying to punish me. She was trying to survive me. And that realization changes how you carry regret. Regret used to feel like wanting a different outcome. Now it feels like wanting to have been a different man in the moments that mattered. That's harder. Because outcomes can be blamed on timing, stress, pressure, circumstances. Character can't. Character is what shows up repeatedly when no one claps for it. Character is whether the person you love feels safe telling you the truth before it turns into resentment. Character is whether your ambition expands your life or just gives you a more impressive reason to be emotionally unavailable. I wish I could say I called her back and fixed everything. That's not how the story goes. Some sentences close doors. Not always forever, but long enough to force you to meet yourself without the fantasy of immediate redemption.
I respected her silence after that. Not because it was easy, because I had ignored too much already.
The version of me from a year earlier would have tried to solve it, sent the perfect message, offered the perfect plan, promised change in a way that sounded convincing, and still bought me time. But some moments don't need promises. They need truth. And truth is sometimes this: the person you hurt has the right to step away before you become safer. So I sat with it. I sat with the fact that she was carrying a reality bigger than both of us, while also carrying pain I helped create. I sat with the possibility that my role now was not to be centered in the story, but to become accountable in private. I sat with the line, "worst mistake," until I stopped hearing it as an insult and started hearing it as diagnosis. A diagnosis of what happens when someone keeps feeling unseen. This is the part most people skip. They want the comeback, the apology speech, the "I changed overnight" arc. Real change is quieter than that. It starts when you stop defending your intentions, when you stop saying, "I didn't mean to," when you stop asking people to measure your heart by what you felt instead of what they lived. I had to learn that love is not proven by internal intensity. It's proven by consistent safety, by whether your presence lowers someone's fear instead of training them to expect disappointment, by whether your words and your patterns tell the same story. Mine didn't, not then. If this sounds like self-destruction, it isn't. I'm not interested in performative guilt. Guilt that looks dramatic but changes nothing is just ego in a different outfit. What I'm talking about is clearer than guilt. It's responsibility. Responsibility says, yes, there was pressure. Yes, there were real demands. Yes, my life is not ordinary. And still, someone I loved felt abandoned standing next to me. Both can be true. The mission can matter, and I can still be wrong in how I carried it into a relationship. That's the lesson I paid for. And maybe that's why her sentence still matters, because it cut through every excuse I had left. I don't know what she says about me now. I don't know if she still hates me, misses me, or just feels relief when my name doesn't come up. I don't know if she ever rereads our messages. I don't know if she believes any part of me was real. I can't control any of that. Maybe I never could. What I can control is whether I let that call become just another painful memory I bury under work. I won't. Because some pain is not there to break you. It's there to stop you from repeating yourself. If I ever love someone like that again, really love, not just admire, not just need, not just fit into my schedule, I won't ask her to survive a version of me that only appears between emergencies. I won't call neglect temporary. I won't use the future as a reason to fail in the present. I won't confuse being needed by the world with being excused at home. And if I can't offer what someone deserves, I'll say it early, clearly, before hope becomes debt. That doesn't undo what happened. It doesn't erase her sentence. It doesn't make me the victim of a hard conversation. But it does mean the pain wasn't wasted. The truth is, the worst part wasn't hearing I'm pregnant. The worst part wasn't even hearing you were the worst mistake of my life. The worst part was realizing she said it after trying, after waiting, after hoping, after giving me chances I kept mislabeling as time. Realizing she probably fought that sentence before she ever spoke it. Realizing she didn't wake up one day and decide to be cruel. She arrived there, slowly. Because I gave her too many moments where love felt like losing herself. That's what breaks me, even now. Not that she hurt me, that I helped her become someone who needed to say that to feel free. So if you're listening to this and you think this is just a breakup story, it's not. It's a mirror. It's what happens when your ambition is louder than your accountability. It's what happens when the person next to you keeps asking for connection and you keep offering explanations. It's what happens when you think, I'm doing this for us, automatically means the other person feels included in the life you're building. They don't. Not unless you bring them into it with honesty, consistency, and actual presence. I learned that too late for us. Maybe not too late for me to become better, but definitely too late to call her sentence unfair. She said she was pregnant. Then she called me the worst mistake of her life. And if I'm honest, the part that still hurts most is this. For a long time, I gave her enough reasons to believe it.